I didn't know what was going on in my own body. Do you know about prolapse? Do you know about fibroids? Do you know how to have a period? I was learning more about my body. I even had children, and I didn't know about this yet. I didn't know about my uterus. That's where I want us to speak up a little bit more. Let's talk about what normal really is.
This is the reality for many of women, and it's exactly why Mary Byerly has dedicated over 2 decades of reshaping the way we think about and deliver women's healthcare. Mary is the VP of Marketing at Hologic, a leader in diagnostics and minimally invasive solutions, and she is a woman on a mission to make sure every woman knows what's normal, what's not, and what's possible. In this episode of Redefine Her, Mary opens up about her own journey, from learning about her body for the first time in a sales training room to becoming a voice that challenges silence and stigma. She talks about how innovation must meet empathy, how leadership means pulling more chairs up to the table, and why marketing in this space is not just about products. It's about purpose. Today on Redefine Her, I'm honored to welcome a leader who's not only reshaping how we talk about women's health, but how we deliver it. Mary Byerly is the Vice President of Marketing at Hologic, where she leads both strategy and with soul. With over 2 decades in medtech, spanning sales, marketing, and business development, Mary has built a career at the intersection of innovation and advocacy. Mary's leadership isn't just about metrics, it's purely about mission. She's passionate about raising awareness for conditions like fibroids and heavy menstrual bleeding, which affect millions, yet remain under-discussed. Her work includes initiatives like Know Your You, which aims to educate and empower women to seek the care they deserve. Mary, welcome. Grateful to have you on Redefine Her today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. You've spent 20 years shaping the way we think about women's health, from innovation in medtech to really how we advocate for care. When you look back on your journey, is there a moment that made you pause and think, this is why I am here?
Yes, sitting in sales training when I was learning to be a sales rep, and I had just exited the food industry and I was now entering into med tech. And I was sitting in my 6-week training class at J&J, and they started teaching me about women's health conditions. And I realized I didn't know what was going on in my own body. I remember calling my mom later that night and being like, Mom, do you know about prolapse? Do you know about fibroids? Do you know how to have a period? And she was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so it was so interesting that I was learning more about my body from my work and what I was going to go do as I embarked on this medical device journey than I ever learned from my family, from my doctors. I even had children and I didn't know about this yet. And so that's the key moment that I realized I love what we're about to go do. It really made me excited to be in medtech.
So you took this leap from food, nutrition to women's health, really, Johnson & Johnson. But then also you were at Stryker for a bit. All of those were some pretty bold career pivots. What do you feel like that taught yourself about really betting on yourself, especially in mid-career?
What you learn in being a mid-career hire, trying to make those mid-career changes is a couple different things. One, you learn what you're really good at. So what can I bet on myself for? Things that I can bet on myself for is I love to have a deep understanding of what the customer needs. And if that's something that another business needs or another department's looking for, then I can bet on myself to deliver that because it's so intrinsically who I am. Furthermore, building teams. I love working with a team. I always say marketing is a team sport. A little bit different than sales. Sales, sometimes you can be out on an island. And I love the team camaraderie. I love the late nights working together, the pizza parties, and then going to get a cocktail after work or coffee in the morning to brainstorm creative ideas. And so those two things are things I knew I could bet on with myself. And so as I started to interview and look at different opportunities, when they're interviewing you, you're actually interviewing them back. What are they looking for? What's most critical to them as they think about the role and how they define success in the role? When they say things that you're like, oh, I know I can do that. Oh, I know I can do that. You can feel it deep in your core. It makes it really easy to make that transition and make that leap of faith. I've had the pleasure of working for some great companies. You mentioned J&J, Stryker, now Hologic. They all are driven by a purpose to make healthcare better. And that was something that runs true to me. So I knew that a shared purpose, knowing what I can bring to the table and what they were looking for in each of those roles really gave me confidence to take those steps and make that leap of faith.
With the addition of obviously needing to understand the customer's needs and really diving in, when you step into a new company or role, it's also about rebuilding trust and reestablishing your brand in those new roles. How did you learn to do that, especially in spaces that may not have been built with women in mind. Healthcare has historically not researched women very well. We've not funded women's health very well. All of these companies have had a major stake in women's wellness, which is awesome that you've been a part of it. How do you learn to extend that branch and rebuild trust and establish yourself as your brand, even in terms of marketing, playing in a team?
Depends on the company you go to, how you might do it. I have been very fortunate to have mentors that guided me. And so I'll use an example at Stryker and another one at Hologic because they're two different worlds, but it does come down to the guidance you're given by your mentor or your direct manager at the time. So at Stryker, I came in and I had learned all this amazing things at J&J that I wanted to show to Stryker. So I wanted to come and demonstrate my knowledge, my expertise, my depth of knowledge, especially in understanding the clinical customer needs. And it was really interesting. Stryker typically doesn't hire a lot of mid-career talent. They really grow their talent from within. And so there's these deep entrenched networks. And I remember my boss saying probably about 2 weeks in, he's like, you need to make sure that people like you in order for them to listen to you. And it was a really fundamental shift in my brain and the way I processed building networks. I was like, that's, not easy to do when you're the new kid. However, I've lived in a multitude of different states. I've even lived out the country. It was being the new kid on the block. So I spent time in the field. So I went and spent time in the sales force. I went and spent time with R&D. I really did ask the key questions of what are we great at? What is our core competency? And with going in with the intention to understand and really listen to what made us great, I then was able to take that information, process it, and come back with, I know what makes us great. I've heard it from you guys. I've heard it from multiple different stakeholders, and people feeling heard, letting people knowing that I really wanted to walk a day in their shoes and not say I had all the answers was critical. So that's what built the likability, if you will, and then the trust for them to say, okay, yes, hey, here's what makes us great, but here's where we could be better. And then when I was really able to match my skill sets to leveraging what made us great and then working on what needed to be better, they felt listened to and then really welcomed me into the organization. So, Hologic, very different. I came in and I tried the same approach. I'm 2 weeks on the job and I was like, hey, I'm going to listen. I'm going to spend time in the field. What I had done at Stryker to build relationships. And I remember my boss at the time says to me, hey, Mary, I hired you for what you're great at. I need you to lean in faster. And so again, different type of business, different need. The team was in a different place. And I was also at a different level of my career. So it's really important as you make these career jumps is to have that open dialogue with your manager or your mentor in the early days. What does good look like? What do you need from me? Is this a fast turnaround? A slight difference also was we were ending the year when I joined Hologic and I was going to kick off our national sales meeting, which if you will, in med device world is the Super Bowl for marketing. It was like, I'm going to need you to show up and show up well because we just invested in you. And he's like, I want to make sure the team sees what you're doing with the current department and how you're already elevating it in that short period of time because you only get one of those a year. And so that's probably where the sense of urgency came from. But it really comes down to having people in the organization help guide you and then being willing to listen and learn. And like I said, step in people's shoes. Go follow a sales rep along for a day or two. Go sit with the engineering team for a day or two. Go sit with HR. By literally listening to what they need, it really becomes clear how to lean in and help.
An underlying factor and a thread through all of that is leaning in to really listen. Because if you didn't listen to them, let people like you in order for them to listen to you or do what you're great at. I hired you to do what you're great at right now. You wouldn't be able to take all of that and then be successful in those roles because it does require partnering with the people who are around you, but also learning from them because there's so many nuggets of wisdom that really we just pick up as we work with some really brilliant leaders that work with us.
Yes, 100%.
Tell me about a moment where you really felt pressure and what it looked like to push back and build up the women around you.
I have been lucky to work with a lot of tremendous women that have demonstrated little things you can do on a daily basis. And I hate to even give you these nuggets out because sometimes people think they're not as authentic, but I'm going to share them because if you learn to build daily practices to make these intentional moments, it's amazing how we change the culture around us. And I've also worked with some ladies and some individuals that weren't so nice and lived in a world where there's only room for one of us. And there's definitely a preferred place to work and live. And so one of my legal partners that I work with actually right now in my current role, she's absolutely phenomenal. What Stacy does is every meeting we are in, she will highlight what a woman says. So when one of us is speaking, she's like Mary said, like Joe said, like Betsy said. And it's those little small things she does that will help build your confidence to A, speak up in the room, but B, to know you have another advocate in the room. And it's that little nugget that I swear changes the way we as females interact in a room. And I try my best to, as soon as I'm in a meeting with other women, is to find a woman I can highlight, to find a woman I can elevate, whether it's complimenting a woman, whether it's just saying, like she said, and I'm going to build on that comment, or having that direct dialogue back and forth to make sure that she feels heard in that room. It's those small little things we can do in these big meeting rooms where it builds the right habits that really make us feel seen and heard and demonstrate what it is to not be the only one in the room and not only have space for myself and my opinion. So that's an example of something that's been done very well. And I try to take that with me to every single meeting I'm in.
I love that, because really, as you are in a position of influence, that sense of inclusion and elevation also shows up in how you lead, demonstrative of being in a leadership role where other people are looking to you. And so as you've taken that from her and then you're applying it yourself, it's like the ripple effect. Other women are going to do that too. And I think it's really beautiful when we elevate each other and straighten each other's crowns and help to shine a light on what women have said, because we all have voices in the room as well.
I've been very lucky to work with lots of talented women and talented men. Sometimes it's just bringing awareness to the fact that, hey, we're going to sound different. We're going to probably approach the problem a little differently, and just helping people realize, hey, this is the perspective I bring, to just open that door. Because I've often found that with some of the men I've worked with that don't get to work with a lot of female leaders, it's, hey, did you know that Joe, she's my sales leader and she's awesome. She's got a tremendous depth of knowledge in sales. And when you watch her in front of a customer, she's truly amazing. And so when I share that with the leadership team, I'm like, hey, when Joe speaks up, know it's coming from a deep customer relationship and connection, because she likely was just in the field last week. So even prefacing her and giving that context around Joe and her skill sets opens the rest of the audience's room to really take in what she's about to say in that meeting. I have found that breaks down the barriers as well.
And that's brilliant. It sets the stage. Also for people to lean in and listen to her instead of putting up our walls. That's awesome. You've led some high-performing teams in spaces that are constantly changing, whether due to regulation, innovation, cultural shifts, and how we talk about women's health. What have you found to be the most important quality in building teams that don't just deliver results, but really believe in the mission?
I'm thinking about an individual on my team right now that he has this trust equation. And the trust equation itself drives me nuts, to be completely frank.
What is the trust equation?
It is relationships times credibility times reliability divided by, I'm going to think about it. I will get it for you. But I don't know how to multiply words. I fundamentally am struggling. I understand equation, but I really don't like to multiply words and divide words. My brain doesn't compute, even though I've got an economics and engineering background. So that's my problem. However, at the essence of what it is trust. And so that ability to have transparent, open dialogue, give real feedback back and forth, and again, immediate feedback. We often will leave a meeting and say, how did that go? What could we have done better? It's really important not to put people on the spot and make it feedback a surprise. Feedback should be, hey, after every one of these meetings, when you're presenting or when you're in it, I'm going to watch and give you feedback. Hope that's okay with you. I can either write it down or we can talk about it. I love it. My team calls me after every meeting. It's like, hey, how'd I do? What's going on? The other thing to teach your team is, as you're building strong teams, is how do you do that own self-reflection? How do I build that ability to self-reflect, self-assess, bring that to the conversation when we're having a feedback? A good example would be someone coming and saying, hey, Mary, in this conversation, I noticed I talked over this individual. I'll work on doing that better and listening better the next time. What other things did you see that I could be doing better in that meeting? It's like, hey, you were a little bit verbose in the intro. We should really summarize with what are the 3 bullet points? What are we trying to achieve? And then summarize at the end with what are the 3 bullet points. It's balancing that feedback and really making a dialogue. But you have to have trust to be able to give feedback. But if you have trust and feedback and a lot of extra fun time, so we work really hard. My team puts in a lot of hours, and we travel a lot together. So we try to make sure, whether it's an individual that loves to go hiking, my creative director, she's absolutely brilliant. She's like, we're going at 4:30 for a hike. And it's like building in that forced fun, but that forced time to get outside of the work world and really experience life together. Someone else, it might be, let's go to an axe throwing contest or whatever. But it's balancing that work and that fun, all centered around trust and transparency, really does build amazing cultures. That, in my opinion, has been why I love working in marketing so much, because we've got such different opinions and we're always growing and learning. And it doesn't matter what you throw at us. We've got a group of people that are willing to get into it together and solve for it together.
That creates a sense of a culture where people feel safe enough to innovate. So their basic needs are being met, they're being heard, they're allowed to fail or have bad ideas that actually can turn and iterate into great ideas, but that allows everyone to really be bold enough to challenge what they have always done. As the VP of marketing, you're not just telling stories, but you're building systems to help those stories reach the right people at the right time, particularly women. In healthcare, that can really change lives, literally. What is one way that you've seen technology, not just medical tech, but digital strategy, data, and content, help expand access, awareness, and self-advocacy for women?
It's so interesting. I'm new to TikTok and I've been on Instagram for a while, but I guess it probably tells you my age range here if my 20 years in medtech didn't already preface my age group. But what I have learned is the beautiful thing about TikTok, Instagram, social media, if you will, is it allows people to tell their stories. And marketing is a science. Marketing is a science of changing behavior. And you could change someone's behavior by giving them facts. That's definitely a way to change behavior. You can do it by telling a story. You can do it by giving them a sample or an experience or with expertise. You bring an expert on to speak about something and that convinces them. There's lots of different ways to change behavior, but throughout humankind, stories are probably the most prevalent and winning way to do that. So how do you take a story about something that no one really wants to talk about and use something like TikTok, social media to really engage with an audience to say, hey, I'm going to share something that's taboo that people don't want to talk about, and I'm going to build a followership to then connect with that individual that's been vulnerable, that's talked about something that probably is happening in my daily life, but no one has ever talked to me about, really is compelling. So it's mixing that storytelling. And then I'll give a lot of credit to, we have a marketing development team led by an individual that not only takes that digital story, but then connects you to a website that says, hey, here's a symptoms quiz where you can fill out a quiz and or talk to a nurse advocate to understand more about what these technologies do. Because sometimes it's a quiz and sometimes you just need to talk to another woman that knows a little bit more about this space to give you answers. And then between those two things, we then funnel you to a physician or a doctor's office that we think can best help you answer your questions, give you guidance. But basically taking you from story all the way to physician's office. I really am so appreciative of digital and social media because that connection point, that patient journey really is critical and allows you to do it in the privacy of your own home. Oftentimes when you're talking to the doctor, you get 3 minutes. And in those 3 minutes, you're like, I'm done. And you've got to go pick up the kids from school or you've got to go to soccer. So you're not even focused on what you're there to do in your 3 minutes with a physician once a year. So how do we make the best of those 3 minutes? And so connecting the story to the symptoms quiz to then connecting to the right doctor that's going to listen, that's going to ask you that probing question and maybe spend more than 3 minutes with you is critical. And I'm really grateful for our digital continuum and our social tools that have really allowed us to start reaching that advocacy on a much more personal level.
Is fascinating in terms of where we've come. All of these platforms that really are allowing people to see themselves in somebody else and then actually take action with that. It's huge because, as you said, one, we hardly go to the doctor until something is wrong. But if you're sitting in your home and you're recognizing, oh, that actually is me, that sounds like what I'm experiencing, and you can take action there in the peace and privacy of your own bedroom, then we're going to be much more open to learning about ourselves, which is what it's all about.
Painful periods are not normal. If you're experiencing heavy or seemingly never-ending cycles, bloating, or pain during sex, you may be suffering from uterine fibroids. Don't know what that is? That's okay. Discover what your new normal could be at betterispossible.com and talk to your doctor about Hologic's treatment options. Better starts today.
We have to take opportunity to learn and create awareness like Hologic is doing. You guys have launched a few really powerful tools like Know Your You and Better is Possible, which are focused totally on giving women the tools and the language to advocate for themselves. How do you think campaigns like these can close the gap between awareness and action, especially for women who've been taught to normalize pain or feel shame around reproductive health, or even, as you mentioned, like are totally unaware?
Yeah, I am so grateful for the creative team because what they did was Know Your You and Better as Possible is they went out and they interviewed hundreds of women and said, what do you need to better invest in yourself? What do you need to make sure that we can elevate this conversation? And what was so funny is from a lot of the different interviews, they said, I didn't know better was possible. And so that's where this whole concept of better is possible is coming from. And I didn't know about my uterus, but 1 in 3 women will have a heavy period and heavy period in their lifetime. And so what that looks like though is the average woman starts their period between 13 and 15, and it progressively can get worse. People are losing time for work. It's affecting their sex life. It's affecting how they see themselves. It's affecting how they play sports. And we normalize that. I heard this awful story of a woman that went to the ER just 2 weeks ago. And when she was in the ER, the doctor literally looked at her and said, are you sure this is not just a heavy period? She's like, I've been bleeding like this for 28 days. Her hemoglobin levels were, super low. And we, at that moment in time, didn't say, hey, let's get her to a doctor's office. We sent her home. And we can do so much better. So what I want women to know is, if you are bleeding more than what is 2 shot glasses of blood or what is 16 tampons over the course of your entire period, I want you to talk to a doctor. I want you to go ask them about what options they have to help address their heavy periods, because there is a better life for them out there. They don't have to miss their kids' school. They don't have to miss their kids' school practices or their soccer practices. They don't have to worry about going to the grocery store and not leaving the house because it's that time of the month, or plan their vacations around it, or plan their sex life around it. None of that. Another doctor says, if you're having to take a Advil every single time your period starts, we should be talking. There's something we could probably do for you. And what I want to say, please, women, if that's you, if I described any of those things are you, let's talk to your healthcare provider, or go take our symptoms quiz to learn a little bit more about whether you might need to see a physician about this. The next thing is fibroids. So 1 in 3 women will have a heavy period, and that's the easy thing for us to diagnose. We know when our periods are happening. We know when they're extra long. We know when we're bleeding through a pad and a tampon. That's a personal experience. That should be good triggers for us that something needs to be done. Fibroids. Didn't know anything about fibroids. 80% of women will have fibroids in their lifetime. Fibroids are a leading cause of heavy periods. They're a leading cause of infertility. They're a leading cause of pelvic pain, of having to go to the bathroom more often, bloating. They're a heavy reason for a lot of different symptoms women experience, and that's what we say is just part of being a woman. There's so much better. And so what's really important for us to think about is, if you are having any of those symptoms, let's go ask your doctor, do I have fibroids? If you don't know what a fibroid is a tumor that builds into the walls of our uterus. They can happen inside the uterus or outside the uterus. They can be in a variety of sizes, shapes, but up to 80% of us will have them. Likely the 2 of us have them right now. And some of them are symptomatic and some of them are non-symptomatic. But the challenge is, for women, we normalize so much of this pain during our period that we don't even know how to go to a doctor and say, I think I have something abnormal happening in my body, until it's really too late. And so that's where I want us to speak up a little bit more and really engage in this conversation of, let's talk about what normal really is. And so when it is abnormal, or when it's really disrupting your daily quality of life, we're having a conversation to go get help.
And it's out there. It is available. And especially if we talk about women in rural areas or underserved communities, that compounds the issue in terms of access. But for women who maybe heard some of that and aligned with that, where can they go to take a symptoms quiz?
They can go to betterispossible.com. On that, it'll educate you about different symptoms for both heavy periods, fibroids, educate you a little bit more about the different surgical options and non-surgical options. Yes, Hologic has a surgical portfolio. We believe in minimally invasive treatments for women, but that may not be the right option. An IUD or a birth control pill or something else might be the right option for you. And so we think it's a decision to be made, a joint decision to be made between the patient and her physician. But it does start with having the right conversation and knowing that there is probably a better solution for what you're experiencing right now. And we want to be a part of that solution and be a part of that conversation, even if it means you pick a different product or a different solution than what we offer. That's wonderful. Women being advocates for themselves and their care and their quality of life. I said this recently in a presentation. While heavy periods and fibroids aren't life-threatening, they're life-altering. And we should make sure that we allow ourselves to experience the best quality of life. And again, I want that for you. I want that for the women that I work with, the women that I know. And I really want that for our entire audience.
Most definitely. I could not agree more. Really, these tools are digital tools, but it allows them to understand the language and be able to bring that to their care provider or a solution from Hologic. But ultimately, this is a vehicle to expand education and healing to women who we've normalized a lot of things in our life because we wear a lot of hats, we take on a lot, we do a lot, and sometimes we don't take care of ourselves very well. So I love that you guys are doing this, and we will make sure to add all of that to the show notes as well so women can check it out and learn more about their own personal wellness and what's going on in their uterus. And Hologic offers a lot more as well in terms of women's health.
Yeah, so Hologic is known for being the women's champion for med tech. So we have three core businesses. The uterine health business that I'm here representing today. We have a breast business that is the market leader in 3D mammography. They revolutionized mammography with our 3D solutions, and I'm so proud to get to work alongside my partner there. And then we also have a diagnostics division, and the diagnostics division for women's health specifically is known for what they've done with the PEP test and our thin prep portfolio. About 20 years ago, one of the top 5 killers of women was cervical cancer. And so the PAP test and some of the effort that what Hologic has done with thin prep has really made it so the cervical cancer now is not even on the top 5. And so it's about better diagnosis. It starts with better detection. How am I aware and educated enough to know that I need to go check something out? So let's go detect it. And then how do we give you the right tools as a clinician or a healthcare provider to diagnose? And so whether that's the thin prep tool or our mammography machines or even our hysteroscopes, how are we helping give the tools to doctors so they can diagnose women sooner so they can get treated sooner? That's really at the core of what we do every day. And again, I'm super excited to be surrounded by thousands of employees that wake up every day trying to make women's health better.
Most definitely. You mentioned that I believe it's around 18 million women visit the doctor each year for abnormal bleeding, and yet fewer than 10% receive treatment. What do you think is the biggest reason for that gap? You guys obviously are starting to change that story, but what do you think is the underlying factor there?
To be plain and simple, is we're not having the right conversations because I don't think know what normal is. And so when we think about these 18 million women and the 10%, if every day I have had a period that I have to wear a tampon and a pad, and I've done that since I was 15, and I'm now 42, that is my normal. If no one's ever educated me that that's not normal, when a doctor says, Mary, are your periods normal? The answer is, they're normal for me. And so I don't think we've used the right terminology or language. And if you actually look at the clinical definition, it says abnormal bleeding. We started the conversation with heavy periods because heavy sound like I actually know what heavy means. Abnormal, I don't know what abnormal means. If you're not in this space, you're likely not educated on what the clinical definition of abnormal is. And so in my personal opinion, we've got to change the conversation and re-educate women. I mentioned this to a group of women a couple weeks ago. When we were in health class in 5th grade, did anyone tell you what a normal period was? Did you know about fibroids?
No, right. Exactly. Well, and a lot of women still think hysterectomy is their only option. Something's wrong down there. We want to avoid that. If we think it's normal or abnormal, whatever it might look like, well, I don't want a hysterectomy, so I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. So what is the reality, and how do we do that? How do we change that dialogue? How do we change that conversation and share that there are so many more very minimally invasive solutions that are changing the game for women?
Yeah, 100%. It starts with awareness, spreading the word. And so it's probably going to be crazy, but you're going to hear me talk a lot about what is normal periods. And I have no problem telling you whether it's 2 shot glasses of fluid, that's all we're supposed to be losing, ladies, during our menstrual periods. Or if you don't know what a shot glass is, a third of a cup of blood, no more than that. If you're losing more than a third of a cup, if you're changing your pad or your tampon more than once an hour, it's abnormal. If you're feeling bloating constantly, if you're feeling pain, we need to make sure we're going and having that conversation with a clinician or taking the symptoms quiz to start the conversation privately in your own home to say, hey, do I need to take this more seriously? I think it starts with that. We are doing our best to make sure we're educating even our OBGYNs that women aren't aware. We're trying to make sure there's more banners that we're talking about it with social media, with Know Your You. How do we help women know there's options? We had a meeting with a guest celebrity who's going to be sharing her story in the next couple of months and raising awareness around this campaign. So we're trying to do as much as we can to raise awareness around the problems and then give women the tools and nomenclature. So when they show up for that 3 to 7 minutes with their healthcare provider, whether it's a nurse practitioner or their OBGYN or even their primary care physician, what we're learning is about a third of women will go to see a primary care physician instead of an OBGYN. That primary care physician is checking all sorts of things. They're likely not digging into your periods. But if we can arm you to walk into the doctor's office and say, hey, doc, this is what's going on with my period. I've been told that there's probably some different options. Can you walk me through them or at least put me with the right contact? That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're aiming to do. So you'll be hearing us talk a lot about it on Know Your You, on our LinkedIn, our social media, and looking to make better as possible a national campaign on a variety of different outlets. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're ready to lock arms with any woman that wants to do it with us. It's amazing when you share these stories, how many women look at you and say, that's me. That's me. I did an event 2 weeks ago. And after the event, I had a slurry of women that came to me and said, Mary, can you put me in contact with a physician? You just described who I am. This is affecting my sex life. I want to be better. I want to not have to suffer through this. And what you just described has been my normal for 20 years. And we want to be better now. And I was like, great.
Because better is possible.
Better is possible. I believe it. I know it. And it's better is possible for each one of us. And it's in our own different way. And I love, you said this earlier, hysterectomies. Hysterectomies are the right solution for some patients. I will say that. I don't want to badmouth. There is a continuum of care for women because every woman's needs are different. And depending on what stage of life we're in, we might need a different tool or instrument or surgical procedure. But what scares me is this. On average, women wait 4 years to get treated. So it takes us forever to get diagnosed. Less than 10% will get diagnosed. And then after being diagnosed, we'll wait another 4 years to get treated because we have this myth in our brain that hysterectomy is the only option, and it's not. There's so many more options, and so I don't want women to wait till they're exhausted and can't take it anymore and are then willing to take the 6 to 8 weeks off for a hysterectomy. There are options that can be done in an office that take 90 seconds or less if you're done having kids, and you can be basically less than an hour of being in the office with the procedure, home that afternoon, and back to your normal activities within a couple days. So there's just so many different things we can offer you. Not here to push a single procedure. I just want you to go learn more.
Right. It takes women so much longer to be diagnosed and then to actually take action. Men do this so quickly. Somehow their awareness around their own medical situations is solved faster. There's so many reasons around it. And in part, it's because women are the caretakers, we're the nurturers. And of course, I'm genderizing this and I am making a very broad statement because that's not always true. But we just don't put enough attention to ourselves or give ourselves enough attention or make the space to it. But solutions are out there. So betterispossible.com and Know Your You. You can visit both of those to gain some awareness so that you can come prepared to a conversation with your OB-GYN or your general practitioner and at least start that conversation for healing for yourself. From your seat at Hologic, you're not just building awareness, but you're really helping women see themselves in the solution. And that's no small task. What is one innovation or breakthrough moment, whether it's in a product or a campaign or a team meeting even, that changed the way that you feel and think about the impact that you can make?
The teams that I get to work with are phenomenal, and to try to pin it down to one moment with them would be difficult. However, innovation, when you're actually listening to the end user, but then also the clinician are critical, because what's interesting about in healthcare, different than consumer goods. Consumer goods, oftentimes the person that is consuming the product is the one that actually buys the product and makes the key decision maker. That's not it for medtech. In medtech, there's a variety of different users and purchasing people that make this decision on any key product. So finding a product that can meet the needs of the patient, also that of the clinician, and that of the hospital, can be very, very complex. And so an innovation that I'll talk about here is a fibroid ablation. We have for years treated fibroids like tumors that need to be removed, and that has been the only way we do it. And as you mentioned earlier, hysterectomy is often the preferred treatment option. So we find a tumor in the uterus, and what we do is we say, oh, let's just take the whole thing out. And a few years ago, an innovation that came actually from liver ablation and other tumor ablations, where they thought, what if we just made the tumor smaller? What if we could shrink the tumor on itself and allow for it to necrose? Could we impact this disease state more minimally invasive and allow for more people to get treated because they don't want to go under the knife and they don't want to have these massive organ removal surgeries, nor can they. You really can't remove your liver that easily. So how do we take an innovation that is being used in a different space and apply it to the uterus? And so we did that. So we have what is called fibroid ablation, where you can do it either laparoscopically or transcervically. So that means through the uterus. The transcervical one has no incision. And what it allows you to do is to go in and cauterize or really cook the tumor so it will shrink down. And we describe it as taking tumors can often feel like a softball, so they're really hard. And so whether it's the size of a softball, which some fibroids are, or the size of a strawberry, which some fibroids are, it allows us to make those hard, really tumorous tissues really soft and feel like marshmallows. And by doing that, we basically kill the tumor, kill the blood supply. So as we think about what fibroids can do for women in heavy periods, it minimizes the heavy periods. It minimizes the pelvic pain and bloating and pressure that we're feeling, and really does make women feel almost immediately better. Now, it takes time to feel the full effect of these surgeries, but what's beautiful is it's much less downtime for a patient. The benefit is solving the patient's need. I can't take 6 to 8 weeks off work. I can't be immobile or not be able to take my kids to soccer practice. Those are things that are very real about a woman and make a woman decide when she can and can't invest in her own healthcare. So with these fibroid ablations, you can be back to work within a couple of days. If you've got a surgery on Friday, by Monday, you're back doing your normal activities, a little bit lighter load, but pretty much back to normal. For the physician, it's streamlined, better visualization, really innovative technologies. It's using technologies that they've used in different forums, ultrasound, hysteroscopy or laparoscopy, but bringing them all together to really innovate for them and give them much better visualization. And then for the hospital, we had to go actually invest, because it's a new procedure, in new codes to make sure they could get higher reimbursement. So we need to make sure that we can properly fund all the parties in this continuum so that way we can continue to invest back in women's health. And so I really am proud of the fibroid ablation innovation. It took from another technology, applied it into a new indication, and really does solve all of our key stakeholders in healthcare.
Looking at it from a holistic perspective like that, leveraging technology and being innovative with a solution really it's just a brilliant way to do that and then come to an answer that can be very helpful for women. Myself, my own personal journey, I've had heavy periods. I've had, oh my gosh, even not that long ago, I was at a yoga intensive weekend and had started my period, and my God, it was awful. And a girlfriend of mine had said to me, fibroid ablation, you should check that out. You should learn more about it. And so just having that awareness, because here I am 43 and never had heard of that. And there's so many of us out there that have no idea what our options are. And so I am really glad to see companies like Hologic creating innovative solutions to problems that affect a whole lot of us. You're leading marketing at Hologic, where storytelling directly impacts women's health decisions. And that's a unique responsibility. When this work is personal and so often rooted in stigma and taboo and controversy, which leads to silence, how do you lead with both strategy and empathy?
I love to be uncomfortable. An example where I tried to bring this to life. I started my career at J&J in women's health, then went to Stryker and did a little bit more broad, like general surgery, things like that. A lot of different applications, and I loved it. And then I came back to Hologic to be back at women's health, very specific at women's health. Stryker does have some focus on women's health, but my job 100% of the time is women's health. So while I was preparing to present what heavy periods are to a sales force at the time, 60% male, 40% female, and I'm asking men to go out and fight on behalf of women and to say, hey, look, doctors are offering this, but not enough, right? 9 out of 10 women walk out of that doctor's office and weren't talked to about their period. I need us to change that conversation. And so my creative director, Laura Carter, who's absolutely phenomenal, helped me come up with a plan to bleed on stage. And so I walked on stage with white pants and I started my presentation and going through the statistics of what was going on. And I describing it to them. And then I stood up. And as I stood up, I had bled through my pants as a woman does, as every woman in that room knows what it can look like. And I did it in what many would say is one of the most uncomfortable things to do, is you're presenting to an audience of 300 people. And I took that opportunity to be uncomfortable, to say, we've got millions of women worrying about this happening every single day. We have to do something about it. And so for me, breaking the stigma meant becoming the stigma, if you will. And I was able to do that with Laura, and it was a ton of fun. And I can still to this day remember the gasp in the room when I stood up, because I just visually connected for all of them what they are called to do. What we pay them to do is to go change this conversation and elevate the conversation. And they had never seen it quite like that. There was even a gentleman in the front row that believed I was actually bleeding and stood up to come help me. I still remember him like looking in fear, like, I got you, girl. And I was like, I'm fine. I'm fine. This is a part of the presentation. Shout out to him, because that was very special. But that was a fun moment. I don't mind being uncomfortable. I don't mind being the vulnerable one, because if I can do it, if I can take that pressure on and alleviate the pressure from someone else, then maybe they'll feel stronger to go do it. And sure enough, I left that room. And as I left that room and I'm hiding to go to the bathroom, no one else in the hotel knew why I had received blood on my pants. I had 3 cleaning ladies stop me to be like, hey, you've got to cover yourself up. It was so funny to see the community that wrapped around me. If you're not doing that as an act, if it's not a part of a demonstration, and it actually really happens to you, the community of people that came around me that were complete strangers to say, we've got you, we're going to protect you, we're going to hide you and shield you. I remember them using the cart that refills the minibar. They used that to hide me so I could get to my room privately. So the rest of the audience in the hotel who didn't know what I do didn't have to see me. And so it was just really interesting. It was this humbling moment to bring something to life that's so real that we talk about every day, but we talk about it, but we don't actually see the impact it has on women. And then to feel the community of people that surrounded me immediately, complete strangers to support me. It's like, we got this. We just got to talk about it more often.
Right. Over half of the population has a period every single month. And so in terms of that community, women are there for each other, for sure. I'm curious, did any men maybe in the audience come up to you afterwards? Did they offer any kind of sympathy, emotional sympathy, or relatability to the women in their life having experienced that? Were there any like light bulb moments for men in the audience? Obviously, I knew it was for us. We knew it was a presentation, but was there anything that stood out to you that was striking from a male's perspective? Like, I hadn't even thought of that before, or hadn't experienced this before.
We do happen to work in women's health, and so my audience is probably a little bit more biased because they do talk about periods more often than the average man. But that being said, they didn't know. Like, they could not appreciate it. And to your point, I had men coming up saying, when my wife says they can't leave the house, I didn't know it was because of that. And I was like, it is. Like, when she says she's not interested and she's got to have a towel, I didn't know it was because of that, because she's done such a good job hiding this for so long from me. I've been married for 15 years and didn't realize it. I thought it was like the jokes they have on TV. And I was like, no, it's her real life. And I was like, you just saw visually what's going on. You have no idea what is actually she feels like is going on inside her body. And so that was what I appreciated, because I do think some men went home to their wives and were like, hey, I'm sorry. I didn't actually know. Too often we make jokes about it on TV. And so there was a gravity that they felt that I don't know that they had fully appreciated before. And my current leader of the business, Schnitker, awesome guy, he got emotional at the end of our sales meeting, because he's like, I've never seen it quite like that. I didn't fully appreciate it. And so the weight of what we're being called to go do sat with him. And it was really a special moment where he recognized that the story hit.
Not only powerful in that it landed so well, but empowering, because they then have empathy for the women in their lives. And that goes even further. I have a 15-year-old son, and I'm pretty out there in terms of my monthly cycle because our kids need to have that awareness because we didn't so much. It's been normalized. And so women hide it. We cover it up. We don't talk about it. It's whatever normal looks like to each of us may not be normal. And so having that conversation and creating the awareness and really for the men in our life, allowing them to see into that side. It's important because it can be debilitating and life altering, as you mentioned, and it doesn't really have to be. If you had unlimited R&D budget or regulatory green lights, what would be the moonshot project or initiative that you'd launch tomorrow?
Can I have two?
Sure. Bring it on.
Okay. I want to be able to help women become diagnosed in the office in those 3 minutes. So whether that is a diagnostic ultrasound, or you could walk in and it could scan your body and tell you, hey, this is what's going on with your uterus. Who really likes going to the GYN? I don't. And I work in this business. But like less invasively tell a woman what's going on. I truly think we're doing a disservice to 20-year-old women who wait for years and struggle and they decide to get pregnant at 30 and they say, oh, and now I have struggled for 2 to 3 years because they're infertile. And it's all because they've had polyps in their uterus since they were 20. At 20 or 21, we could have removed those and made it so when they decided as a family to become pregnant, she didn't have to suffer. She didn't have to go through emotional toll of that. And it's because we didn't tell her. We know 80% of women in their lifetime will have fibroids, but yet we're not diagnosing or helping them see it. So I want to be able to diagnose women faster, better, easier, and probably a little bit less intrusive. So ways we're thinking about it is we use ultrasound right now. If you've had a child, you know about ultrasound that help you tell you what's going on with the baby. We could be using ultrasound within our uterus to help us get a map of what's going on. And we could do that in the office. So how do we make ultrasound even better at visualizing what's going on? Again, I'd love a full body scan that as I walk in, it not only tells me my muscle mass, but also tells me what's going on with my uterus. That would be fabulous. And then the second thing that women are looking for is alleviate endometriosis. Endometriosis is an issue that millions of women are suffering with, and there's really not a good solution for us. It's not diagnosed well. And for those of you that don't know what endometriosis is, it basically is the inner lining. So we have a uterus, the inner lining is our endometrium. It means some of those cells, for some reason, are growing on different parts of our body. Typically, it happens with birth. And so what will happen is during your period, when your endometrial lining is sloughing, like it normally does, if you have that endometrial lining sitting on your bowel or sitting on your liver or sitting on your lungs, they've even found endometrial cells in the brain. It causes excruciating pain, just like what happens in your uterus. That same thing happens on these different organs. And women go for years, multiple surgeries without being diagnosed or being able to be effectively treated. So that would be the next moonshot project I'd love to go tackle and solve for, because man, I wish we could fix that for women. I wish they weren't suffering.
I would love to be a part of that because it's so impactful for women. And there is not really a solution. It's a lot of blood work. It's a lot of testing, but even beyond that, it's like debilitating to try to continue to go to the doctor to get answers when you're not getting answers. And yes, there for sure. That definitely needs to be plant that seed because we need a solution for earlier diagnostics, but also for endometriosis because it is just the things women go through.
The things we go through. Brenda, I love that you're talking to your son about it. I talk to my husband about this all the time. My poor husband is like, I know more about periods than I ever want to. And I'm always like, hey, the ladies in your office are like, he's like, I don't know how to have this conversation with the ladies in my office. I'm like, well, just let them know what I do. Just all you need to say is my wife does this. And that way, if they ever need help, if they ever need a referral to a gynecologist or a PCP, or they want to talk to someone, they can call me without you having to be the go-between. But it is funny that we do have to bring the men along in our lives. It's actually been scientifically and economically proven women are the healthcare decision makers of the family. More often than not, where a woman had her children, whatever hospital she has her, she will likely take her father, her mother, if they happen to have a heart attack or need medical care. She will take them to that institution. And so women really are those healthcare providers. Men's healthcare often is taken care of because I know the role I play in my life. It is my job to make sure my husband takes care of himself, and my job to make sure that I get him to the doctor's office, and because I want to take care of him. And because our period is a monthly part of our life, it's so regular and normalized. Our husbands don't know that they need to help take care of us there. And so it's not that they don't want to. It's not that the men in our lives don't want to care about us. It's just they don't know because no one's ever explained it to them. We barely know. So how can we expect the guys to know? And so don't be afraid, ladies, to make sure you're doing what Brenda's doing, which is bring your sons along, bring your husbands along, bring your coworkers along, because when they can have the empathy for what we're going through and the perspective, they really do show up better for all of us.
And that also will it changes the continuum of care, because for so long, the women that have come before us, they've just not done it because they also have not been aware. They haven't created that awareness. And so allowing ourselves to have that conversation, open the doors to that conversation. If you don't feel comfortable with it, that is understandable, but your girlfriends are there for you. So reach out, find someone like Mary, find someone who's in your network and your circles that you do trust and feel comfortable sharing with, because someone wants to make sure that you are also taken care of and that your basic needs are met and that you have that self-care. But yes, it certainly extends beyond just ourselves and deeply into our families, because these things can definitely alter our day to day. So I appreciate that. Hi, ladies. Thanks for listening to Redefine Her. I wanted to share something with you about In Women's Health. If you're building, investing in, or working in women's health and want to lead, then the In Women's Health Mini MBA was built just for you. This 6-week high-impact program gives you a behind-the-scenes understanding of how the industry works. From payers and reimbursement to policy, marketing, regulation, and more, you'll learn directly from industry leaders at companies like Kindbody, Genev, Portfolia, and many more. Whether you're pivoting into women's health or scaling a company within it, this MBA-style experience helps you gain clarity, sharpen your strategy, and connect with a powerful network of operators, clinicians, and investors. Better yet, I've got an affiliate code for you. Visit inwomenshealth.com and use Brenda Armstrong 100 to save $100 and reserve your seat for their next program. Mary, you're juggling a lot yourself. VP of Marketing, mom of 3, advocate for change. What does balance look like for you these days?
What I love about the word balance is it feels like there's motion in the word. And that's how I feel balance is. Balance is always in motion. What I would define today versus yesterday are different things. I was actually on with one of my team members late last night working on a project. Her son came in. We were on a Teams call. Her son came in. It was 9:30 my time. It was 8:30 her time. My son came in. They're doing homework around us. And the only reason I could work late last night was because my kids all had homework and it worked out well. And that was balance. That was okay. I've tried to learn as I go through this journey for balance and the work-life balance. I don't know that I'll ever figure it out. So it's really to give ourselves grace. We walk around with a lot of guilt. And I always wonder who puts that on us? Why are we putting it on ourselves? And so as much as I try to think about balance, I try to think about how do I remove the guilt that I'm feeling? Because that guilt actually is what puts me out of balance. And so if I can feel less guilty because I didn't cook dinner for the kids tonight and we actually went to Jimmy John's, or can I feel less guilty because I worked late on a project last night while the kids were all working late? I'm not sure where the guilt monster comes from, but she visits me often and I do my best to kick her out of my life because she's not doing anything for me. She's probably not doing a lot for a lot of us. And so as I think about balance, I really do, like, on the other hand, it really is this guilt monster that I'm trying to manage. And if I can manage that and manage her, then balance feels much better for me.
We need a guilt monster ablation tool as well.
Yes, I'll add that to the list.
Thank you. How do you care for yourself within that rhythm?
Everything I went on TikTok and Instagram says you got to be walking 10,000 steps a day. I have a treadmill in my office, and my team knows I love my walking one-on-ones. And so we often text each other like, hey, do you need me in front of a computer, or could I put my AirPods in and go walk? So normally I'd be doing this meeting walking, but because I wanted to try to show up a little bit better and not be so breathy on the call, here we are. So it is sneaking those away. It's giving yourself permission that maybe in my 20s, I needed an hour and a half long workout 5 days a week. Today, if I can get 15 or 20 minutes of walking in, that's a win. And giving myself that grace that's a win. And so I do try to put realistic goals in. For me, it is movement. I'm trying to do the Pilates stuff. I love that you're doing yoga. I have so much respect for people that can do yoga. Pilates is a stretch for me. Do that on the weekends, find time for that. And then the walks. Also, my husband and I recently relocated back to Houston from Kalamazoo, and making sure I find time for us is important. And so finding the time on the Saturdays and Sundays to go on our couple walks and walking the dog. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. We just get around the block, and sometimes it could be for an hour and a half. But when we can carve that time out and prioritize it ourselves, that refills my bucket. He means a lot to me. And the thing is that with the walking, I do it with my kids. I actually learned this from another mom. Like when you're driving your kids one-on-one to a practice, it's unsolicited time where typically you ask one question, they'll just start rattling off. Nowadays with phones, oftentimes they can get lost in the phone or the radio or whatever they're listening to. With walks, they can't, because the phone stays home. And so I'll tell my kids, I did it with my 18-year-old 2 nights ago. I was like, hey, I need to talk to you. I was like, I just need 15 minutes. And sure enough, it turned into, he's like, Mom, let's do one more lap. Let's do one more lap.
They just like want to spill. They want to spill. They want to talk to you. They want that closeness. I love that. My husband and I also walk. And it's funny because we sat down last night at the dinner table, and sometimes we have hard conversations around the dinner table. And last night I was like, I need to talk to you about something. And my son just looked at me like, what? What have I done? I'm like, just kidding. Because you also don't want to make those times always about something that needs to be remediated. It's also just that really special time. And I love that you do that with your husband. I do that with my husband too. And I know when we get home, he's always so appreciative of it. And really I am as well. It just is carving out that time, making space for each other. And also there's something processing through walking. There is there's a correlation to that is really impactful for people. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I believe in it wholeheartedly. That movement kind of just, you get into a flow, and it's my favorite time is when I can be doing a meeting, walking and talking and creatively. And sometimes we'll be working on something creative and I'll get stumped, and I'll just get up and walk with my team and we'll be talking about it. And it's like all of a sudden the ideas just start flowing.
Movement is medicine. We can leave it at that because it truly is.
I love that.
What do you hope that your kids see, and what do you hope that they take away from you watching you lead in this space?
There was a surgeon I used to work with. He passed this last year, and the surgeon was a phenomenal surgeon, world class. His hands were some of the best technically I've ever seen operate. He actually delivered one of my children because I worked with other doctors and saw him and realized what a difference of quality of surgeon could be. And so just truly phenomenal human being, phenomenal. But what was so special was I got to spend some time with him and his family and the love that they had for one another. I mean, here is this man with God-given talent and world-class surgical skills that you might think is really focused, and sometimes geniuses can shut out the world. And he had this deep love within his family. And so long story short, my hope is that my kids feel my passion for my job, see the commitment I put into what I do every day, whether it's the long hours, how much I talk to my team and love my team. But what it really comes back to is that I love them first and that they come from a loving family first. To me, I will have done well if my kids can wake up and say, my mom was super passionate about her job. She loved it. She was a career woman. She did all these things. But what we felt most was her love and the family that she provided. That I will die a happy lady. And there's definitely, as you go back to balance, I don't know that I'm always doing that well. So I try to remember that I have that great role model of who that individual was, this genius, and what I saw with his family. And so that's what I aspire to every day.
That's beautiful. That gratitude, just from this conversation, I see that in you. And so I am 1,000% confident that your kids see that in you. It's not always easy because our kids are like our mirrors and like our biggest teachers as well. But
yes, ma'am.
I can imagine from just the conversation that we've had today, you really impact a lot of people. The way you speak about your team members, it's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. One last question. We'd like to pass the mic forward. So our last guest asked this of you. If you could change one thing about the way women's health is approached, whether that is through technology, policy, leadership, what would it be and why is that important to you?
Depending on the day, I could give you a different answer, but this one's going to stay with me because there is a study, but it's about reimbursement rates in women's health. And so there's a recent study published that reimbursement's how a hospital or how a doctor gets paid for a surgical procedure. And what they found is that in women's health procedures, so in a hysteroscopy where we look inside your uterus versus a cystoscopy where we might look into your bladder on a male or a female, in male procedures, you can get reimbursed more. than you do in female procedures. Yeah, it's super disheartening. And so we actually, Hologic, have been investing in a clinical study to prove this. And we have the data, but guess what? No one wants to publish it because it's such a taboo topic. And because the way the healthcare system works, it's got a water balloon. There's only so much money. And so if we squeeze urology to give more to gynecology, then urologists get mad. That's broken. That's fundamentally broken. And so I would love to change the way we reimburse women's health, because if we change the way we reimburse, if we change where the money goes, guess what happens? The innovation will follow. But until we do that, it's going to be challenging.
So many women are having challenges and then creating solutions. So products, whatever it means, digital health, digital therapeutics, products like Hologic is creating. But still, it is underfunded. And as you just said, even the reimbursement's underfunded. That is, I had no idea. There's so much that I don't know, clearly, but it is just striking to me that this is 2025, and here we are still underfunding women's health in every regard. It is heartbreaking. I agree with you. That needs to change desperately.
Working on it. We're working on sharing that publication and making sure that we keep fighting the fight, because if we could change that mindset. I don't want to take from another specialty to give to gynecology. That's not the right way either. We need to add. This needs to be an and statement.
Exactly. And there's enough to go around.
Yes.
So let's add to that, and let's actually value the women in our life and value the healthcare providers that are caring for the women in our life, because we deserve a spot in the room and our voice is being heard. Which, speaking of, Mary, thank you so much for bringing your voice and your story and your purpose to this space today. You really have reminded us that redefining women's health isn't just about innovation, but it's truly about intention. And I'm so grateful that you've been able to show us your story and your journey today, and really what that authenticity looks like in action. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the time. It's been an honor.
It has been great. Thank you so much, Mary. Mary Byerly doesn't just talk about women's health. She lives it, leads it, and lights the path forward. Through her work at Hologic, she's helping build a future where fibroids, heavy bleeding, and endometriosis aren't whispered about or ignored, but understood, diagnosed early, and treated with care. With initiatives like Know Your You and Better Is Possible, Mary and her team are creating a digital bridge between stigma and empowerment, between pain and answers. This is what advocacy in action looks like. This is what it means to lead with both strategy and soul. To every woman listening today, you deserve answers, you deserve options, and you deserve to be heard. Hologic is helping shine a light where the system left shadows. And Mary, she's making sure we never look away again. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe here or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to share, like, and leave a review. Together, let's continue to redefine what's possible in women's health and wellness. Until next time, stay inspired, stay empowered, and keep redefining her. This episode of Redefine Her is produced by Taryn Long and Brenda Armstrong and proudly sponsored by Idiom Talent Partners, experts in search and placement services for health tech and femtech companies focused on building dynamic, inclusive teams. Learn more at idiomtalent.com.